Hello and welcome to Weekly MTG. I'm your host Blake Rasmussen, and joining me today is the amazing Carmen Klomparens. We are going to be talking Foundation Starter Collection, and this is not your father's starter collection.
No, this is, in a lot of ways, we always joked that it was somewhere between the ultimate shoebox that you got from the Queen of the Animal Club, your older brother, and the best deck builder's toolkit we could ever imagine.
Yeah.
Putting on a shelf.
Absolutely. So seriously, I cannot understate. We're going to show you everything. We're showing you everything from the starter collection.
All the exclusive stuff from the starter collection.
Stuff.
But it's like over 100 cards. We're doing like 100 previews in an hour.
We're doing probably more previews than we've ever done in a show. But this thing is seriously awesome and really a game changer for your first Magic collection. Before we get to that, both Carmen and I were at MagicCon Las Vegas. We're both a little bit bleary-eyed. My flight yesterday was delayed
90
by
seconds
several
ago, we were
hours.
both just going, so busy.
So busy. But there was a lot of awesome stuff. There is no way we could go over all the news that happened. So I just want to share something small, because at the end of the show, when we were starting to take things down, we were going to one of the cases where we were displaying some product. And this little thing was in the display, but wasn't for sale at the show. And one of the guys who was managing a booth next to it was like, seriously, we got so many questions about where you could get this, so I figured I'd answer those, and because they're adorable and really cool. So this is from WizKids. These are companions from Arena. So it's this cool partnership specifically with Arena. There's Arena codes. We'll talk about those in a second. But there are 4 of these little companions here. So that's Mabel. We got Fibblethip. We got the little Koi. And then I'm going to open one of these up just so we can see this here. We got the Fisherman. So these are available both at a local game store, or you can order them directly from WizKids. If you want to get them from a local game store, you can head to wizkids.io/local store. If that's not an option, you can head to wizkids.io/MTG charms. Now, each of these, so you'll open them up probably more efficiently than I did there.
You're doing great.
I'm doing great.
You're doing great.
No sleep for the past 4 days. All right, and you get this adorable little companion. There's the Fisherman. It's a keychain. You can hook it onto things. But you also get this Arena code in the box. You get a digital sleeve with the code that you can't see it. Haha, we got you. You have to scratch it off. But you get a digital sleeve and a discount on the matching companion in Arena. You'll also have an opportunity, they're looking for input on what other companions they want in the next round of these. So either, I'm just going to fumble all over the place.
What's the name of the Hedron guy from Zendikar Rising that
man,
does all the cute emotes and everything?
I don't know what the name. I'm
all right,
going to call it Crawley.
That's my
I'm going to call him Crawley.
Yeah, make sure and ask them for Crawley.
So anyway, head to wizkids.io or your local game store for more on these adorable things. They were not for sale at MagicCon Las Vegas, but I know a lot of people were looking for them. The next thing I want to talk about, so you're wearing an Extra Life shirt. So Extra Life was also at MagicCon Las Vegas. Raised a ton of money.
Raised a ton.
Ton of money, but there's more. There's more coming.
Yeah, so we are doing our game day stream. We do one of these a year. The next one is coming up this Saturday. That is November the 2nd.
Yes, November the 2nd. Time is a construct. No,
I swear we didn't notice that. But we've got a bunch of really cool stuff lined up for it. We've got a Q&A with Mark Rosewater. I'm doing 4 different episodes of a game show not a game show, a fundraiser parodying a game show where, as we all know, the only way to fund is by raising, the only way to raise is by gaming, and the only way to game is to get gaming or something like that. I'll have the details worked out. I've got a couple days to rehearse. Seriously, we've got a bunch of awesome guests lined up. I know I've even got Gavin, I've got Chris Mooney, I've got the set lead for the upcoming Pioneer Remastered over on Arena, Ben Whites. You really aren't going to want to miss it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's also more going on this week. Employees doing extra live streams, are taking over all week. So there's going to be one after this show, starting at 11 o'clock. Then we're going to have a few shows on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, leading into that Saturday stream. If you want to learn more, just stay tuned after this show. 11 o'clock here,
right there.
twitch.tv/magic. Okay, that's the news.
It's time.
It's time. We're going to talk about the starter collection. So why don't you, first of all, give us an overview of what the starter collection is?
Totally. So the starter collection is a little more than 350, little less than 400 different cards. And I think it's tickling under 300 different ones if you don't count the basic lands. But really the idea of what it's trying to go for is, for a lot of us, when we first started playing Magic, someone did just shove a shoebox at us and go, all right, just throw something together.
Mine was a crate, like a milk crate.
Okay, the ultimate milk crate.
Yep, there we go.
This is hopefully going to give you a lot of opportunities to find something to fall in love with, some sort of card that you think is cool, or just give you the tools to build a bunch of different decks. I've used a lot of my, I'll say my cube prowess to try and map out all the different things you could build. And I think you can build about 20 different decks right out of the box. Maybe not all at the same time. There's some overlap, of course. But this is mostly meant to get players from, I've played my first 20 games or so, really want to get a taste for deck building, all the way up to, I think I'm ready to go to the LGS and I want to try Friday Night Magic.
Sure. Is the whole thing standard legal then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the whole thing is standard legal, save 3 cards that are specifically if the place that you're going on your Magic journey is towards Commander. There's some stuff for you in the Soul Ring vein that has its own little shrink wrap around it.
It's marked clearly,
Says, right, exactly.
Yeah.
But for the most part, everything else, it is very clear what's going on. I think it is literally 400 cards or something like that, where 397 of them are standard legal.
Okay, and they've got the Foundation's legality, so they're legal as long as Foundation's.
Correct, and they all have the same set symbol, everything like that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's dive into it, because again, we have so many cards to talk about. Some cards from this were previewed over the weekend at the debut at MagicCon Las Vegas, which is probably something we're just going to keep saying at MagicCon Las Vegas from now until MagicCon Chicago. But we're going to show off pretty much everything else, and then at the end of the show, on dailymtg.com, the entire full list of what the starter collection is going to be up there.
And I do just want to throw out, at MagicCon Las Vegas, which we're going to keep saying until MagicCon Chicago, we did announce the return of MSRP.
Yes.
So it is fitting to go ahead and tell y'all that this is going to be going for $59.99.
Yep.
So all of this, ideally, great value. I'll let y'all be the judge. Drop in the comments of Twitch, wherever we're streaming.
We're on Twitch, yeah.
Okay, thank goodness. Sorry, long few days.
Yep. All right, so let's dive into it. We're going to start with some mythic rares. So there is a selection of mythic rares here on the screen. Now, first of all, as we talk about rarity, it's important to note this is a fixed product, right?
Correct. All of these are going to have the same cards in every single one. I think there's a few booster packs in there. So obviously put that in its own little special camp. But this is a quote-unquote fixed deck product. I want to make sure that this is as consistent an on-ramp for Magic players as possible for the entire time this is legal. I want to make sure that if 2 people each buy one of these, someone doesn't get the, quote-unquote the good one.
Yep. All right. So let's start with the mythics and start talking about, some of these are Commander staples. Some of them have tournament pedigree. Talk a little bit about some that stand out to you here.
Yeah, so a lot of what's going on here is just trying to signal to newer players what each color is about. There's some stuff in the vein of Expression of Color Pie that was really important to me to put in there, and making sure that players could on-ramp into basically whatever format they want. This might not be as optimized as, say, one of our Commander precons for Commander, but you can see Ramos Dragon Engine was, so if it turns out all your friends play Commander and you bought this, you still could throw something together. You have Maze's End as more of an alt-wing condition that actually scales into a 40 life format, and I really thought that was something that was cool to try and have just a couple of slots that really opened up a lot of other possibilities out of the box.
Okay. I also love seeing Dragon Master Outcast here. That was, a tournament card back in the day. Classic. Yep. Scales really well no matter what format you're playing in. Angelic Destiny. I've lost that card Plenty of times.
Aurelia the War Leader was actually a late edition. So at the very last second, we realized we had one too many mythics in the main set. So this was one where I had a different card here that I would say is less cool than Aurelia the War Leader, which might be my favorite red-white rare mythic ever.
Okay.
But I went to the game design lead, Brian, when I heard that he might need to delete a mythic, and basically just went, please, 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 please. And ideally, this is the type of thing where we get to signal what the coolest things in Magic are without really having to sacrifice very much.
Yep.
In a lot of ways, this teaches you a little bit about what Boros is about, and you just get to see this big, awesome, badass angel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. These are not, someone just asked, are these all the mythics? This is not all of the mythics. It's pretty close to all of the mythics, but we revealed a few over the weekend.
We had Lyra Dawnbringer, for example,
Yep.
was shown in MagicCon Las Vegas on
Yep.
the debut panel for this, as well as Maelstrom Pulse. So Maelstrom Pulse isn't going to show up on these, but Lyra Dawnbringer, Maelstrom Pulse is going to be in every single copy of the starter collection.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to, we've got a couple slides for rares. We're going to show the white, blue, and black ones here, and there are some interesting inclusions here. What stands out to you?
So one of the things I want to really point out is some of the rewards there were for being monocolor in this. I know whenever you're a newer player, kind of learning how hard it is to acquire dual lands and how important those are, kind of a low dopamine part of the Magic onboarding experience. So I didn't want players to feel like they were having to give up a ton. If they went, no, I'm just going to put 20 planes in this and have a good time. So you can see Lyndon Steadfast Queen, Arcanus the Omnipotent, Tempest Gen, Myojin of Night's Reach, all of these that have that sort of triple pip, quote unquote, costing going on to really let players feel rewarded if instead of going down the two-color route, they are just a monocolor deck.
I'm excited for the turn of Myojin of Night's Reach. That lots of people can be miserable then.
And also, there are a lot of cards in here that also just have a good bit of tournament pedigree, right? I feel like I'm almost a broken record at this point saying, these are quote-unquote real Magic cards. One of the things when I worked at NLGS that I kind of hated about the onboarding experience with newer players was they get something like an intro deck and they fall in love with some cards, and then you have to politely pat them on the head and go, all right, that was diet Magic. Let's get you to the good stuff.
Yes.
But you can see a bunch of these that still hang out at commander tables today, and even in high tier stuff that have won Pro Tours in the past.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at this, like cards that I can count that have been in like competitive standard decks. Charming Prince, Felidar, Charming Prince is seen play in a lot of formats. Felidar Retreat, Fumigate, Regal Caracol.
Regal Caracol top 16, the Pioneer Pro Tour earlier this year out of the sideboard. Like this is maybe it was top 32. It did pretty good.
It was there.
It did pretty good. Midnight Reaper, Desecration Demon. I mean, Tempest Gen won a Pro Tour.
Yep.
These are super real Magic cards. So whenever someone goes, I've built a deck around Tempest Gen, some of the cards that we're going to show you today, you can say, oh yeah, that's awesome. Like this is not to shout out too many specific content creators, but so many of these were kind of in the space of Shivam and Ben. We want them to just go, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Colostria Highborn. Do you remember that one? Come on.
That card's so good.
Right. So much of this is about closing the gap between someone being a quote-unquote new player and just being a Magic player.
Yeah.
And giving them that sort of shared vocabulary and shared affection for a lot of cards that we know as veterans of the game was really important to me.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and I like that, the theming from the main set, because there's a lot of key creature types in the main set, so like vampires. So when you see something like Highborn, and you get, with this, you get 3 packs, or if you buy a few other packs of Foundations, you'll see that commonality between the two.
Right. Regal Caracol and Felidar Retreat are both other examples of things where once you have gotten the starter collection, or the beginner box rather, you go, all right, I have cats versus vampires. I move on to the starter collection and go, oh, I get to upgrade my decks as I go on. It's not just a fixed thing. I get to customize how it is I want to build my cat's deck.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at some more rares. So this is the red, green, gold, artifact, and land rares. A lot of cool stuff in here too. What stands out to you?
So one of the things that I do want to touch on this slide, so on top of the CCC cards that you can see, just kind of finishing out that cycle, we have Predator Ooze, which is just kind of cool ooze, gets bigger.
Yep.
Gratuitous Violence, about as red as a card can get, just doubling a bunch of
Pretty
damage.
red, yep.
We also showed off, if that's not red enough, Ball Lightning is also in here.
Yes.
That's another part of the
I'm going to die to
quote-unquote
Ball Lightning
CCC.
so many times. Stromkirk Noble into any 2-drop into Ball Lightning. I will just go home.
Right. That's the kind of thing where Ball Lightning's another one. I mean, we joked about it on stage. Max McCall, the executive producer on the set, he just went, man, Ball Lightning. And that's that's exactly the type of thing that we're going for here. But something that I think is a little bit different than the other cards is Wiltleaf Liege.
Yes.
So this is one that has some amount of tournament pedigree from back in the day, even showing up in Modern during the Birthing Pod era, a little bit in Abzan decks as well, the more fair versions. But it is a hybrid card.
Yeah.
This is a different kind of multicolor, and something that I cared a lot about whenever someone got the starter collection is this was going to on-ramp them into greater Magic for at least the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So that meant that you need to learn about different expressions of multicolor whenever we go to, say, somewhere like Strixhaven. The last time we went there, lots of hybrid cards. So you need to know how hybrid works if you want to engage with Strixhaven. So finding opportunities to have organic sort of hybrid cards to put in there was something that was really important to me, just for educational purposes, but it's also just a sweet green-white card.
I mean, it's really good. I mean, we're still in a format that has Liliana of the Veil around, and you know, I've seen some people playing Ravenous Baloth for that, but
we were joking internally because we're like, oh, Obstinate Baloth, that's going to
yeah,
rotate eventually. What do we do? And I got to kind of go, no, guys, don't worry. I'm on it. Cultivator's Caravan is actually another one where I think this might be the only vehicle in the whole product umbrella because, you know, vehicles don't come up all of the time. But if you go somewhere, say, a Death Race set going across multiple planes, maybe in the next year or so, you're going to need to know how vehicles work. So this is something that's just a really clean vehicle that is sort of no frills in a lot of ways, but does give you a taste for what's possible in Magic.
Yeah. Let's see, a couple other ones that stand out to me here. Primal Might, like we just saw a World Championship with red-green prowess being a thing. Primal Might's real good.
I love that card. I mean, in some ways, there is a little bit of this where it is, haha, I'm holding the microphone. I get to pick my favorite cards. This is one where I have my own top finish. Back when I was a pro player, was a deck with a bunch of Primal Mights in it because I think this is a really fun card. I love fight spells in general, but this is so much just showing, okay, what do green rares look like? What are the kinds of things those can do?
Yeah. Maze Mind Tome is another, that's kind of the opposite side from Primal Might, but drawing cards, gaining life, that one, I've played that in tournaments before too.
And there were a few cards here, like Maze Mind Tome, where these were actually asked from the tech leads at the FFL. So those are Jaden Klomparens and Andrew Brown. They both said, hey, these are things we've tried to reinvent a few times, but really we're always just kind of chasing the same North Star. Midnight Reaper on the last slide was another example of this. And they go, you know, we actually kind of think we might have just knocked it out of the park the first time, so we would rather just have some of these cards be perma-legal and be options for players. And if we think of an awesome idea, then we can still make it again if we want to, but we feel less obligated to do so for metagame reasons or to make sure that there's always a Maze Mind Tome around.
All right. Now let's look at, we're going to go color by color. So you're going to see some of these cards repeated as we talk about each of the colors, but we're going to have Carmen talk about sort of how they built out all of the colors. You'll see other cool commons and uncommons that, again, are going to be important. They're going to be legal and standard for quite some time. They're going to form the core of the experience. So let's start with white.
So a lot of what you're going to be seeing here are either these sort of go wide, attack, get them dead sort of deck. There's seeding for some life gain stuff going on. All of these cards are things that we're previewing here today, but there are cards like Ajani's Pride Mate in here as well. These are just sort of new player all-star cards that are really, really satisfying to play with, really strong with Linden, Steadfast Queen. I don't know if you ever played that deck on Arena back in the day.
I have,
A lot of triggers.
Lot of triggers. On
On
Arena, that's totally fine. It'll take care of it.
Exactly, but you really just get to actually play this life gain beatdown deck right out of the box. You also get a lot of big angels. We've talked about a couple of them already. You also have there's some cards in here that are maybe a little bit too strong for limited, so this was a better place to house them if we wanted a really charming effect that we thought was great to get in front of new players, like release the dogs.
Yeah.
So 4 mana, 4 1/1s is something that it's just a little bit too much for limited sometimes, but the concept is just so good.
Yeah.
Just having all the dogs running out, it does exactly what it says on the tin.
It releases the dogs. Now there's a couple cards that have some tournament pedigree in here as well. So like Valorous Stance is a pretty staple effect.
Valorous Stance is one of those cards that I always joke that play designers love to tell you how much they love Valorous Stance. This is one where I brought it up even when I was getting hired in my interview where they're like, well, what's a card you wish was always standard legal? And it's Valorous Stance.
Yeah.
It just
great.
does what you need a card to do.
Exactly.
I also like that there are some things in here that I tried to slip in that kind of get you into, I'll say, the more meme territory of Magic. So with the Zatalpa, this is just a cool card on its front. But
one of the first comments I saw when we put the Mythic thing up was, oh, Zatalpa, we haven't reprinted that in a while.
It's so nice.
It's like the Mythic Colossal Dreadmaw.
You get the meme. You get to dial 1-800. Are you flapping? Like you just get that on ramp into being part of the Magic community and not just at the kids' table is something that I'm really hoping that those sorts of slots can like feel like normal Magic cards, but also help you make friends along the way.
I'm interested in, so the inclusion of Fumigate is, Fumigate's, again, it's got a tournament pedigree, but the main set also has Day of Judgment. I know that design talks a lot about like wraths and the different levers and having 5-mana ones and 4-mana ones. What was the thought behind Fumigate here?
So a lot of it is just trying to give players the tools to go wherever they want to within Magic. So something like somewhere like Commander, it's not clear to me Day of Judgment is that much stronger than Fumigate, but Fumigate can hook into more kinds of decks. It can give you more rewards for certain things. I also really wanted to make sure that most of the macro shapes of cards that you can expect to find in Magic were present here in the starter collection. So a sweeper for your control deck was sort of one of the boxes that needed to get checked. And I don't think it is obvious to a lot of newer players why you would want to kill your own creatures. So finding that little bit of upside to say, hey, just try it out.
We'll give you a
It'll come up
as a treat.
Right, exactly. I think temples are another example of this where we've played Magic long enough to know why dual lands are good enough. But giving you that little extra, those sprinkles on top to say, hey, just try it out. Just try it out. It's gonna be fine, is the type of thing that gets players to have these organic sort of self-teaching moments in the box itself.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, let's move on to the best color, blue. We've got some new things here. Confiscate stands out to me.
New art.
New art, long pedigree on that one. Chart a Course is, I think, currently in standard, but
it is now. It's in LCI, and now it's really in standard.
Now it's really in standard for a while, and that is a very strong card. Tell me about this collection of cards.
Yeah, so some of these are just iconic cards that people who have played Magic for a long time are almost assuredly going to know about. Rite of Replication's just been a Commander All-Star since it was called EDH.
Yep.
I remember even back in the day just copying your opponent's Commander to blow it up. Really funny. But something that a lot of people might notice is there are fewer cards here than on the last side. That's because a lot of blue is actually built out of the main set. You have this sort of flash, tempo-y, some stuff like Quencher, Counterspell, backup deck in mono blue that you can build right out of the box. Ideally, this can give you directions into all of the other colors. Blue is kind of the hardest one to seed with the others. Most of them are blue-black control or blue-white control with some life gain, something like that. But I do think we mostly got it to a good place.
Yeah, and that is a good reminder again. So we're not showing you the 100% full complete contents of the starter collection here. At the conclusion of the show, the dailymtg.com will go live with the full list, and it will include like cards from the main set. So we're mostly revealing stuff that has not yet been revealed.
That last slide also had the card Fog Bank on it, which I think is something I want to touch on for a second, where The difference between your 25th game of Magic and your 100th game of Magic is pretty stark.
Yep.
Fogbank is one where it might not necessarily have the same, at least recent tournament pedigree that some of the other cards that we're talking about have, but it is something that's just awesome whenever you're playing at the kitchen table with your friends. And so much of what's going on here is trying to make sure that we are getting players prepared for step 3 of their Magic journey and step 8 of their Magic journey. And so that's something I mostly just want to call out because I think it can look a bit confused if you see some of the cards side by side, but ideally it is going to give players either the ability to graduate from there to FNM where you might not want to play Fogbank as often, or if you buy the starter collection and go, wow, this is great, I love playing with my mom at home, then you're going to have a good time because Fogbank is awesome in more casual environments.
All right. Let's take a look now at black. Bunch of cool stuff. Wishclaw Talisman. I mean, I know we saw Wishclaw Talisman before, but that one stands out to me. Gatekeeper of Malakir is a great one. That's
a lot
back.
of Zendikar era vampire bangers here.
Yep.
Like Pulse Tracker was one that I personally really like a lot. You can see Knight of Malice here. We saw the other Knight in white. That was another one where at the very beginning I was like, I wonder if I could do White Knight and Black Knight. That's just, you see it and it's just, I know at least when I was newer, I was like, oh, I get it, they're fighting. That's so cool. This is Violent Tumor's first time in Standard, actually.
Okay.
So this card was originally in Modern Horizons 2. It was when we had to test a little bit because we weren't sure if that rate was correct, where it looks a little innocuous, but Entomb is just such...
Entomb is, pretty powerful card.
It's a very real card, but it does a lot to kind of help round out a Reanimator package, especially since you get one-ofs of so many of the coolest big, rare creatures in this. If this is the matchup to try and reanimate Zotalpa, then you can, this is sort of an additional copy of it or an additional way to get in your graveyard. The same is true for something like Ovika, or maybe you go to Aurelia, whatever it is.
Well, and vampires definitely take center stage here, but I'm very interested to see what happens with Desecration Demon. We just saw a World Championship where Demon control sort of
thing. It definitely is one of the cards that's made me the most nervous. Right now we have Archfiend of the Dross, which I think is a bit more powerful.
Yes.
But Archfiend of the Dross is going to rotate.
It's going to rotate, and I mean, how many 6/6s for 4 does a deck want? I don't know.
That's a fair point, actually. Yeah, like maybe this is just Archfiend number 5 or something like that. It is one of the ones where I've been watching this demon stack just pop up over time and me just sort of sweating going, okay, well. I thought this was just a cool card, a year ago or whenever it was we had to lock this down.
But this might be legit.
But hey, this might be legit is kind of where I'm really trying to go for on most of these cards is I don't think all of them are going to hit, but I think some of them are going to hit. And having players who decide, oh yeah, I love beating people up at the kitchen table with Desecration Demon, they take it down to FNM and they play against somebody who played Mono Black Devotion back in Standard and they go, oh yeah, I remember that one. Let me tell you a story.
Well, and even when you're talking about someone who's starting to build their collection, they may not have 4 of the other 4 cost 6/6 Demon, and maybe this helps round out their deck for FNM or whatever. So I think it's a really cool inclusion. Next up, let's take a look at some red cards. A lot of Banes of my existence here.
That's burns of your existence.
Burns of my existence. All right, what's going on with red here?
Face is the place for the most part. That's the most common expression of red that we're all used to.
Freaking Lavamancer. Anyway, go on.
Yep, we got that. We got Vanishio Pyromancer. We've got some of that spells core that people who played during Dominaria Stone there might be remembering. Unfortunately, no Wizard's Lightning. That one was a little too spicy. We did try it. We've got more burn coming up in the show. Trust. It's going to be okay. We've also got a bunch of casual all-stars. Front and center here, you can see Taurine Mauler. Awesome in Commander. Impact Tremors, Gutter Snipe. These sorts of things are cards where even if they aren't necessarily tearing up the floors in Standard, they're going to let you have a pretty good time just
and
playing
always
Magic.
Things when you're building decks you got to remember exist because they do have some pedigree, and there's always situations where these are the right cards. I've died to Impact Tremors plenty of times.
Yeah, exact same. And you've got a little bit of dragons here. You can see Hoarding Dragon, Lathliss, Dragon Mage, Dragon Master Outcast. These are all cards that are pretty sweet. And we know dragons are one of the coolest things in Magic. We touched on it a little bit in the debut in Las Vegas. We know what a lot of the creature types that get players the most hype are. I wanted to make sure that we could also lean into those here and go, oh yeah, look, Hoarding Dragon, you know this concept. Here's how we do it in Magic.
Yeah. I also Crash Through. It's going to be one of those cards you've always got to keep in the back of your head because, like, the single mana cantrip, it does things sometimes.
It was doing well in Pro Tours in the Hogak era in Modern.
Yeah.
Like, that's a real card. I also really like Ravenous Giant as one here where maybe, I'm hoping it doesn't go too sideways where people just go, oh yeah, that's color shifted Juzam Jin. Let me show you the real card. But it is so close to the real card, and it kind of gives you an idea of there's a little bit more. It's like teasing a bit, where if you learn more about these cards, you'll be rewarded for that exploration.
All right. Now let's move on to green. Chat's been asking for green. Here it is. Again, my eyes go to a couple cards here. Imperious Perfect. We've seen a number of really strong elves previewed from the main set. And then also Circuitous Route up at the top. We already saw Maze's End, so it looks like you're seeding a few things here. Yeah,
Arctray Angel, Gateway Sneak, Circuitous Route. I think we're going to see a couple more Gates cards coming up here in the rest of the slides. I wanted to make sure that Maze's End wasn't totally a trap if I'm going to be putting it in the product. And also Circuitous Route was kind of, I wanted an explosive vegetation variant in there, and I thought, oh, what's the cool one? And this was something that, there were a lot of little things that added up to putting the Gates package into the product, and this was one of the things where, oh, it solves for this problem. That's pretty cool. Okay. Imperious Perfect is one. I think I ended up landing on 2 of them in the starter collection because they are just army in a can.
Yeah.
Very cool. It's also a little bit too strong for limited. Probably not spicy enough to be a rare, but it's really cool to get it in players' hands. This is a card that I know a ton of people who have played with this card and loved it, even when it was not strong. Yeah. One of their names is Carmen.
Become a Magic designer. Just put all your favorite cards in the sets.
But like in the less out loud way. But yeah. I mean, so much of it is we're all fans too, right?
Yep. Exactly.
And I do want to point out a cute little combo. I tried to find a bunch of opportunities for these to give players that sort of A plus B aha moment. Finn the Fangbearer, Venom Connoisseur. Venom Connoisseur, my first set team for a standard set when I got here was Streets of New Capenna. So I still had this one in the back of my pocket as something like, oh, okay, so this is a way you can push for damage later on. But Finn the Fangbearer also got to be one of the most popular monocolor commanders. So having that, oh, great, these are even better than the sum of their parts is just the type of thing that bridges that gap and helps players become better deck builders over time.
I do want to pause and answer this question because it's a good question and it's really important to this product. Will there be plenty of this product printed so that everyone can access these cards? Yeah, I mean, we're printing foundations for the next few years.
Forever.
Yeah, forever. Probably not forever.
Okay, until the death of the universe.
But yes, the intention is for foundations to be around and to really be the backbone of your standard and just Magic experience for years to come.
Yeah, and this is one where, we've already said it one time, but it's only going for an MSRP of $59.99, and that was a price that at least some people, could have been anybody, were just pressuring down the whole time. Like, look, this is a newer product. Like, this is for newer players who might be less used to the Magic ecosystem on things. We want as many people to get their hands on this as possible.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going because we've still got gold, artifacts, and lands to go through. So let's see some gold cards. A lot of cool cards.
Here's that burn we've been talking about. I'm going to take a sip from my drink.
Tell us about Boros Charm.
Okay, so this is one that's actually a multi-format all-star. Playing burn in different 60-card formats is one where it's one of my favorite things to do. Right? I know there were multiple times on my birthday, even when I was a pro player, I spent my birthday in just playing Legacy Burn. Just because. Listen, everyone has something wrong with them, and that is my burden to carry. But something I cared a lot about when working on Foundations was having a fairly strong proactive burn deck. I think that's one of the best ways to get players into being able to hang a Friday Night Magic with something where you don't necessarily need a ton of new cards from whatever the new set is. It also kind of lets you actually play a lot of games that you can win. And I want people to be able to win whenever they play with these cards. Not all of the time. Like we did a lot of play testing, and even if red is really good in standard right now, it's not really a burn deck.
Yeah.
It's doing a lot with creatures, a lot with pump spells, stuff like that. And we've put a lot of safeguards into the set. I think Crystal Barricade was previewed at the debut, for example. We believe there are a lot of safeguards in place for all burn spells burn to stop it from being the best deck in the format, but you do kind of get to dip your toes in the water at FNM and then see what other decks people are playing, and ideally march forward from there and feel like, oh yeah, I win a couple packs each week. I have a good time.
Yeah. A couple other cards I want to call out here. Chat noted Trigon Predator is back.
It's a classic. I mean, this is what I ran the Mitgo Vintage Cube for a couple of years, and it's just a really satisfying blue-green card to play with. Some of this was finding ways to just express multicolor, teach players what multicolor cards look like in Magic, and some of that was about color pie and not just raw rate.
Yeah. Someone's saying not even one playable merfolk. Oh, someone has not been paying attention. We had several.
Prime Speaker Zagon is a merfolk.
On this slide alone, but we also had the flash one from Harbinger of the
Harbinger
Tides.
of the Tides, yeah, the card top 8 at a Pro Tour.
Anyway, I also want to point out Dryad Militant. This is another one of those cards that is it's a utility card. You've always got to keep in the back of your head if you're an aggressive deck, and graveyards matter. It's a really important card to just be there. Also pairs well with Wiltleaf Liege.
Exactly. We got new art there as well, and both of those cards are ones that play pretty well in either of them, but are doing some of the work of cards like Mystical Teachings, shown in the Foundation's debut as a starter collection exclusive as well. Cards where if you want to play that in your mono blue deck or Wiltleaf Liege in your mono green elf stack, it'll be fine, but it's really going to be juiced whenever you pair it with plains and forests.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, now we're going to move on to some artifacts. Let's see, these, I know an internal favorite is that new art Felden's Cane there.
Yep, this is one that Ari Zerolnik was really stoked to get to do some of the concepting on the set and find ways to, the new way to kind of pull this one into 2024's art style. This is also a card that I was pretty passionate about including in the starter collection itself, so I think whenever you're newer, there's sort of this, how do I put this, a phase of the beginning of your journey where your friend's beating you up with their mill deck, or they're beating you up with their discard deck, or they're beating you up with their burn deck.
Or you only have one copy of this card and it's now in your graveyard and you want it back. That's how I felt with Felden's Cane.
Yeah. But so much was just giving you the really obvious level 1 way to say, all right, I'm tired of getting decked out. I'm going to beat that mill deck.
Yeah.
I think some of the really frustrating ways to lose games of Magic, I wanted to build in very obvious ways to address it if you felt like you couldn't do that otherwise. And Felden's Cane is a card that also, the first time you read it, you just go, oh my God.
Yeah.
Magic cards can do that? That's unbelievable. And as you become stronger in Magic, you realize why spending a whole card on not getting a card or impacting the board is not the most sound way to win at least tournament games in Magic. But this is one of the cards that has been the king of the kitchen table for almost 30 years now. 30 years now, I think. It was in Antiquities. 30.
Pretty close,
30 years now. What if we get on to the next card we're going to talk about, like Hedron Archive? Yay!
Something more recent. Sure, Hedron Archive. Or Chad has also gone a little nuts over Expedition Map coming to Pioneer.
Yeah, that's one that I wanted to make sure that there were cards that actually scaled into formats like Commander, formats like Modern, without tearing up the floors in Standard. So Expedition Map is one where there's a not zero chance there ends up being something strong to do with it, like Field of the Dead or something eventually. But for the most part, this is something that scales into Eternal formats and is an honest, powerful Magic card without just being something like, oh, if you want to play Standard, you actually have to buy 4 copies of the starter collection, which I think is one of the fail states of this product. So that's at least the hope with cards like that. But again, finding things with some sort of pedigree where you go, wow, Expedition Map's sweet. What do I do with that? You go onto Google, you type it in, and you see a ton of deck lists. You go, oh yeah, I'm playing Magic now.
I'm really also enjoying the inclusion of adaptive automation in that, there are a bunch of like creature type matters cards in this set, in the main set. And that helps any of them, which lets people boost whatever they're interested in.
One of the big puzzles with this was finding cards that could fit into multiple archetypes without feeling too shoehorned about it. And
sure.
I think Adaptive Automaton does a good job of, even if it might not necessarily be as elegant as other things, it's a card that people like to play with.
Yeah.
Right, so there's a point where as long as you're giving people something cool, I think it's fine. 3 Tree Mascot's another example of one that is actually out of Bloomborough. That one just came out, where that one is the only changeling other than Taurine Mauler, I guess. But this one can also fit into any deck that is typo, theoretically, to round out, I don't quite have enough vampires or elves or cats, whatever it is. That one's a bit less, that was a bit more rough and ready, we'll say. But it does mean that players actually do have enough cards to build that elf deck or that cat deck right out of the box.
Yeah. Also, we've shown it on the screen a couple times. We haven't talked about it yet. Basilisk Collar is another card that can change the math in a lot of matchups.
I think this is one of the cards that I am the most worried about environmentally.
Okay.
So this is one where just having a cheap equipment that gives Death Touch is really strong. I mean, we saw it when it was standard the first time with Cunning Spark Mage. I know I played a lot of Mayhem Devil when it was in standard before I worked for Wizards, and this card would have been unbelievable.
Yeah.
To just go, I'll reveal Basilisk Collar to my Trail of Crumbs, equipped to my Mayhem Devil, and just start shooting down big
things
stuff.
down, yeah. All right. Finally, our last slide for the starter collection. Let's look at the lands, and I bet you could have guessed at least 11 of these.
They're gates.
They're gates. So talk a little bit more about the inclusion of gates in this product.
Yeah, so a lot of this was basically trying to make sure that players saw different kinds of dual lands. I believe these aren't actually the only duels. I think 3 of the duels from the main set, which I don't know have been previewed or not, or the common dual cycle from the main set. But showing, hey, there are a lot of different ways to have a dual land in Magic. These are something that you're probably going to have to pay attention to as you play Magic, and that can even be a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
So giving you rewards for paying attention to your dual land cycles, like Maze's End. I think we saw Gate Colossus before. That was something that I really wanted to help players on. I know putting landfall in set was something I was very passionate about as well, to kind of go, hey, I know lands are a little boring at first, but trust me, they get cooler and they're fun to think about.
Yeah.
Crawling Barrens is also a creature land, which was on my little box of or my checklist.
Your checklist,
okay, I need to make sure there is at least 1 creature land. Those come up a lot. We do them every couple years. In Eternal formats in particular, they're really big.
Yep.
Crawling Barrens was one that you could put in anything. It also feels pretty satisfying to play in a monocolor deck because so many of the monocolor decks are beatdown decks. Having it so, okay, I can finish you off after you play a Wrath on my Vampire stack.
Yeah.
I can finish you off with Crawling Barrens or something.
Yeah. And then Cryptic Caves and Demolition Field are just really, really clean effects on lands that are good to have around for a while.
Yeah, and I think Cryptic Caves is something that does something similar to Landfall, where it makes, I think for a lot of newer players, myself included, there was a time where we went, I'm just going to cut a land for a spell. Who cares? It'll work out.
I still do that.
Right, exactly. No, I'm guilty for sure. And Cryptic Caves is one of the ones where it goes, no, just put another land in your deck. And if you draw too many of them, this one is explicitly going to be better when you draw too many lands. So you should put lands in your deck. Yeah. And Demolition Field was another one that was an ask from the FFL where they went, hey, we would love for this card to be legal forever.
Yep.
And also it helps whenever your friend has some cheesy Cabal Coffers Urborg combo that you don't quite have because you used to have the starter collection, so you can at least interact a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and it's also it's nice that it's in the same as the map, so that if if there is a land thing in the future, there's a safeguard built in as well.
Exactly.
Cool. All right, so that is our overview of the starter collection. Again, now the one thing I do want to do before we move on is just talk about what is in the starter collection. So we have already posted this, but so the starter collection includes 387 Magic the Gathering cards. That includes 26 traditional foil cards. So it's going to, and those are going to be the same cards for each one. You're also going to get 90 basic lands, 10 of which are full art. You are going to get 3 Foundations play boosters as well. So that's where there's going to be you're a little bit of a different experience for everyone, but 3 of those boosters. There's going to be 14 tokens, 2 reference cards, a little booklet that teaches you how to build your deck, and then a little click wheel thing. So.
And a lot of thought's gone into all of that. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, some of this is the Obama giving self-medal meme, but I even worked very closely with architecture on mapping all of the double-sided tokens, what was on the back of what, to go, okay, I don't think these tokens will end up in the same deck very often.
Yeah.
So they'll be on opposite sides. So ideally, whenever you're newer, you actually get to play with tokens most of the time,
Yep.
instead of having to go,
Yeah. All right. So yeah, starter collection, $59.99 MSRP. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's coming out with foundations. We do have one more treat, or 8, depending on how you count. So foundations, the main set, also has special guests in the play boosters and collector boosters. And we're going to reveal the rest of them. So we revealed a few on the debut on Friday, but we're going to show off the entire gamut. So let's just put them all up on the screen there. We have Condemn, Sphinx's Tutelage, Grim Tutors, a big one, Ember Cleave. Thank goodness that is not standard legal.
unlucky.
Two
kinds of players.
Yep.
I believe in the cleave personally, but you know, you do you.
Oh, I believe in the cleave. I just believe it's coming for me. All right. Goblin, Bushwhacker, Bloom Tender, Paradise Druid, Achroma's Memorial. That one, the art there is so good. I mean, the art on all of these is really good, but I love that stained glass art. Temporal Manipulation, which we already revealed, and then Fiend Artisan. All of these are getting that planar frame style, showing where they're from or where they could have been from.
And I think these do such an awesome job in the vein, or in fitting into the set in a lot of ways, where they tease what's possible about Magic in ways that are pretty iconic, where you get an idea of the aesthetic of a bunch of other planes. For some of them, like Achroma's Memorial, you go, wait, who's Achroma? And the text box tells you a lot of what Achroma, the card, does, but learning more about the character Achroma kind of sets you on the path to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So very cool collection of cards. These are going to be the special guests found in Foundations. These ones are not standard legal, correct? So they are numbered and have the same set symbol as other special guests in previous and future sets. Okay, now we've got a little bit of time for Q&A. If you have questions specifically about the starter collection, go ahead and put them in chat. It helps me a little bit if you tag @Magic, just so I can catch your questions as we go along. And then we'll just throw them out here to Carmen. Let's see. Let's see. Are the old mythic red 5-mana dragons with haste, the examples are like Thundermaw, Stormbreath, are those considered too strong for standard?
I don't think so. Some of that is basically the tough balance to strike on Foundation specifically is these are cards that are going to be legal for a really long time.
Yep.
And we wanted to make sure that they don't get old in that time. A lot of these cards are fun, but they aren't necessarily taking the center stage in a lot of ways.
Sure.
So something we thought about a lot was, do we want games starting the same way a lot? And do we want games ending the same way a lot? And the problem with something like Thundermaw Hellkite is that it's frequently the top end of most of its decks, and we didn't want red to just be great, and then you kill them with Thundermaw for 5 years.
For 5 years, yep.
Transparently, one of the cards that we actually cut was Monastery Swiftspear, which was it's my favorite card ever.
Yeah.
It's very simple, and in a lot of ways it sounds like a good fit for this sort of project. It's a French vanilla creature. It teaches you about combat math, but every deck that plays Monastery Swiftspear is pretty similar.
Yeah.
And we didn't want a lot of red for the whole time this is legal to just be, okay, great, here's Monastery Swiftspear, which is really hard for us to compete with on raw power level. And then also you kind of know what the deck's about the whole time. Whereas Llanowar Elves, the details change a lot. Right? Llanowar Elves is obviously a strong card, but generally, even if it is technically contributing winning percentage points, it's very different to cast a Domri Raid as opposed to a Jade Light Ranger, as opposed to a Birthing Pod, and so on.
Yep, makes sense. All right, you're a cube aficionado. Can starter collection be drafted as a cube?
anything can be drafted as a cube, but I didn't necessarily optimize it that way. I would guess you would want to do a little bit of futzing with the numbers for that to be that satisfying. There are some things there's only one of. There are some that there are full play sets of. Every color I kind of gave a play set of something. Like we've previewed Llanowar Elves and Burst Lightning already.
Okay.
Those are the 4 ofs for red and for green to say, hey, if you're building a green deck, this is probably what you want your deck to be about. So you might run into some issues where there's only one ofs of certain rares or uncommons, but everyone has Burst Lightning.
Okay.
But I do think you could turn the contents of it into a pretty fun starter cube.
Okay. And that, I think, gets to a question I've seen a couple different ways here, but I'll ask it again just so you can emphasize and talk about it. Is the starter collection singleton?
No, it is not. So this is something where I actually indexed too consistently initially, where I don't think I gave players enough freedom to kind of express themselves through deck building, which is something that's really important to me too. And as soon as someone pointed out, it was very obvious to me what I was doing wrong, but finding the opportunities for cards like Venom Connoisseur meant cutting down on multiples and not trying to be too prescriptive with the decks that we wanted people building. So while it isn't singleton, I would say most of the cards are singleton.
Okay.
But there is enough infrastructure for you to have your 4 copies of Llanowar Elves or what have you for the decks that are really going to want them.
Okay, and again, we'll have the list up on dailymtg.com at the conclusion of the show. They may already have it up. They're very on top of things.
Great people doing the tech side of this. Shout out to our producers.
Absolutely. Of all the gold cards previewed, we've only seen one Dimir card. My question is, what?
So the one Dimir card we have seen is Mystical Teachings? Or were there other ones
I don't remember
that we showed
I don't know
here?
that we had any on our slide here.
So some of the ones that were not previewed here. Oh, I know what the rare is. Okay. So there are some cards that do overlap between main set as well as the beginner box. And because we were previewing 100 cards here, we didn't want to scoop previews from other content creators or someone like that. We wanted to give them the opportunity to talk about something awesome.
All right. Is Splinter Twin in the set? No.
Not yet.
Not yet. Let's see. Roughly how many cards are standard legal through Foundations? We probably don't have that number on.
Dozens.
Yeah. Let's see.
I would guess a few hundred, but I don't actually know the answer.
That's fair. Let's see. Are temples in the starter kit?
Yes. Temples are in the starter collection. I don't know about foils through collector boosters and how that is going to work.
Okay.
But I am of the belief that they are not going to be part of the play booster experience, and they are more for starter collection. Things that we have previewed alongside starter collection, I believe, are starter collection things.
Yeah. And if you're interested in what is in what product, so there's a couple good ways to do that. The best way is to head to the card image gallery, which again is going to be on dailymtg.com. That will be updated with cards from this show at the conclusion of this. And each individual card will tell you what product it is available in. And so you can just click on the card, look for the card, and it'll tell you right there. And then the other way to get the breakdown is to look at collecting foundations. So you can search for it either on our website directly or just Google collecting foundations MTG. It'll pop right up at the top. And that has details on where everything is and what the different slots are in each type of product. So I highly recommend those for looking up like specific cards that you're interested. Here was an interesting one. So we showed a bunch of cards here. We didn't show any fogs, so any cards that prevent all combat damage.
We showed a fog bank.
We showed a fog bank, but like the classic fog where you cast a spell and no creatures deal combat damage. So the question is, are fogs not considered good for beginner Magic?
It is. The problem is more the cost they incur for competitive Magic. So I played a lot of Turbo Fog on the outside, and frankly have a tendency to break it internally, which makes us very wary of committing to fog, hazel pollen, something like that, and something that's going to be legal for as long as this is.
Yeah.
That's the type of effect that we want to make sure whenever we do put it in a standard set, which I don't think is off the table, that we do have the infrastructure around it to have the damage can't be prevented, questing beast-esque, not that many lines of text, but that line of text.
That specific line of text,
or bone crusher giant, whatever it is. We want to make sure that we actually have the environment prepared for that sort of effect.
Sure.
And we wanted to reduce the amount of homework we would have to do with something like this. We wanted to not have to go, oh, wait, that card's in Foundations, and our damage can't be prevented card's about to rotate. We need to figure out a new place for another one. We want to kind of pick and choose our spots on that type of effect.
Okay. Here is a good question. I'll actually answer this one. I got a question. The set will be active during the next 4 years. So will it be a release per year, or will it be a one-time release product? So this is one of my favorite things about Foundations is if you buy it once, you have it. But we are going to keep printing it. As long as people are buying it, we're going to keep printing it because it is going to be legal. So our thing with standard sets is we basically print them as long as they're legal and standard and people keep purchasing them. And that's going to be the same, that's true for Foundations. So if someone starts the game 2 years from now, there will still be Foundations right there on the shelf.
Yeah, and something that was really important for us throughout Foundations development is basically just questioning what we had done with core sets leading up to this, right? Because some parts of it were fraught, and we really wanted to correct for that. And one of the problems that we found was each core set was trying to leave room for maybe the next core set to be awesome or something like that. And this one, we just wanted to say, okay, what is the core set look like? And that's why we've put so many cards that are as cool but risky as Maelstrom Pulse, as Boros Charm, for example. We want cards that get sort of quote-unquote buy-in from the old heads to go, hey, you're new to Magic. If you want to try out Standard, go get this.
Yeah.
Go get this. It has real cards. It has strong cards. You're going to have a good time playing with us at F&M if you just pick up the starter collection.
Yep, absolutely. All right, that is all the time we have. Thank you, Carmen, for joining us. Again, the starter collection, more details are going to be available on dailymtg.com at the conclusion of this show, both in a standalone article and in the card image gallery. So definitely check that out. The MSRP is $59.99. That got the biggest ovation all weekend.
No, I know. I really didn't think that would be. I was like, I even questioned putting it in the thing. I was like, that sounds a little crunchy. Like, this isn't a trade show. What are we?
I knew it would get a good reaction.
I should have trusted.
It got 2 applauses, which was above and beyond. But it is also, and like even here, it just makes talking about it so much easier.
Right.
So I'm instead of getting a ton of questions, what's this cost?
Right, and just you're gonna find that out when I do, champ.
Yeah. Again, it is suggested. That doesn't mean that it's exactly what you're gonna pay, but it's gonna be somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for tuning into Weekly MTG, and we'll see you next week.